Welcome back to U.S. and World Politics Decoded, your channel for understanding the complex forces shaping our world. Imagine this: a nation facing immense pressure from its powerful neighbor. Threats of annexation, a looming trade war, and a newly elected leader thrust into the international spotlight, tasked with navigating these treacherous waters. This isn't a political thriller novel. It's the reality unfolding right now in Canada. In a stunning turn of events, Canada has just concluded a crucial election, bringing former central bank governor Mark Carney to power as Prime Minister. This wasn't just any election. It was held under the long shadow cast by the United States, specifically the policies and rhetoric of President Donald Trump. Today, we're diving deep into the results, what they mean for Canada, and crucially, what they signal for the already strained relationship between Ottawa and Washington. Stay tuned as we decode the implications of Canada's choice. Just months ago, Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal Party seemed destined for a near-death experience at the polls. Opinion surveys showed them trailing the opposition Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, by a staggering margin, almost 30 percentage points. Many political analysts were writing the Liberals' obituary. So, what changed? Two major factors dramatically shifted the political landscape. First, the unexpected resignation of Justin Trudeau, who, after nearly a decade in office, faced voter fatigue. This opened the door for a fresh face, Mark Carney, a respected former governor of the central bank, though notably someone contesting his very first election. Second, and perhaps more pivotally, was the increasingly aggressive stance from south of the border. President Trump's rhetoric about potentially annexing Canada, turning it into the 51st state, and the imposition of potentially crippling tariffs sent shockwaves through the Canadian electorate. What might have initially seemed like bluster suddenly felt like a tangible threat to Canadian sovereignty and economic stability. This external pressure became a dominant theme in the election. Carney and the Liberals capitalized on this, positioning themselves as the party best equipped to stand up to Trump and defend Canadian interests. Carney adopted a combative tone towards the U.S. right from his acceptance speech. The strategy worked, but it was a close call. While early campaign polls suggested a potential landslide for the Liberals as the Conservatives' lead evaporated, the final week saw the gap narrow again. Voter concerns shifted back towards domestic issues like the cost of living. Ultimately, Carney led the Liberals to a narrow victory, securing a fourth mandate for the party. However, it remained unclear initially whether they would win an outright majority in the House of Commons, which would allow Carney to govern relatively unchecked, or if they would need the support of smaller parties to pass legislation. Despite the loss, the Conservatives under Poilievre did make gains, securing their largest share of the popular vote since 1988 and likely increasing their seat count. Let's zero in on the most significant undercurrent of this election: the tense relationship with the Trump administration. Mark Carney made confronting President Trump a cornerstone of his campaign and his early mandate. Even before the election, during a phone call described as professional, Carney stated that Trump brought up the 51st state threat. This wasn't just campaign rhetoric. It framed the election as a fight for Canada's very sovereignty. In his victory speech, Carney didn't mince words. He directly addressed the perceived threat from the U.S., stating, "As I have been warning for months, the United States wants our land, our resources, our water, our country." He accused President Trump of trying to bend us so he can own us, vowing, "That will never happen." This confrontational language signals a significant shift, or at least a hardening, in Canada's approach to its largest trading partner. Carney acknowledged the difficulty ahead, warning Canadians that standing up to the U.S. would be challenging and might require sacrifices. This sets the stage for a potentially rocky period in bilateral relations. On the trade front, Trump had already imposed tariffs on Canadian goods. Carney has pledged to maintain Canada's retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. However, he's also cautious, warning that expanding these tariffs could harm Canadians more than they pressure the Americans, indicating a careful balancing act is required. To mitigate reliance on the U.S., Carney has committed to diversifying Canada's trade relationships and alliances, highlighted by a recent trip to Europe. This strategy aims to reduce Canada's vulnerability to pressure from Washington. The election result, therefore, is not just a domestic political shift, but a clear statement on Canada's stance towards the current U.S. administration. The voters, faced with perceived threats to their nationhood and economy, opted for a leader who promised resistance. While the Liberals celebrated their comeback, the election brought a painful defeat for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Not only did his party fail to secure power despite their earlier lead, but Poilievre himself lost his own parliamentary seat in Ottawa, a seat he had held for 2 decades, since the age of 25. This was a stunning blow for a career politician who seemed poised to become prime minister just weeks prior. In his concession speech, Poilievre acknowledged the loss, but framed the results as the beginning of a shift, highlighting the gains the Conservatives made. He vowed to stay on as leader. However, his future is uncertain. While credited with reviving the party's fortunes initially, some segments within the Conservatives blame him for failing to adapt effectively once the Trump threat became the dominant election issue. Losing his seat significantly weakens his authority. Although analysts believe he still holds a strong grip on the party, the Conservative caucus has ousted previous leaders after election defeats, making his position potentially precarious. The party now faces internal questions about its direction and leadership in the face of the Liberal victory and the ongoing external pressures. Prime Minister Carney faces immediate and significant challenges. First on the agenda is the relationship with President Trump. Following their pre-election call, Carney mentioned Trump had agreed to quickly engage in broad talks on economic and security issues with whoever won. A meeting between the two leaders is expected soon, setting the stage for potentially tense negotiations. Domestically, Carney must quickly form a cabinet and convene Parliament. As a first-time elected official, he'll also face parliamentary questioning for the first time, a crucial test of his political skills. Adding to the pressure, Canada is set to host the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, in mid-June. This means Carney will soon be welcoming leaders from the world's major industrialized nations, including President Trump, along with leaders from the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the EU. This high-profile event will thrust Carney onto the global stage immediately, demanding deft diplomacy, especially given the current U.S.-Canada friction. Carney's government will need to navigate the delicate balance between standing firm against perceived U.S. encroachment and managing the vital economic relationship, all while addressing domestic concerns like the cost of living and potentially governing without a majority. So, Canada stands at a crossroads. The election of Mark Carney signals a determination to push back against pressure from the Trump administration, particularly concerning trade and sovereignty. The coming months will be critical, testing Carney's leadership both domestically and internationally, especially as he prepares for direct talks with President Trump and hosts the G7 summit. The future of the U.S.-Canada relationship hangs in the balance, influenced heavily by the combative stance adopted during this pivotal election. What do you think about this election outcome? How will the Carney government manage relations with the U.S.? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. That's all the time we have for today on U.S. and World Politics Decoded. If you found this analysis insightful, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with anyone interested in global politics, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an update as we continue to decode the complex world of U.S. and international affairs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.